Sung Jin Woo, from Hunter to Monarch. A normal, average Joe gains power, just like many other people within his society. These people become hunters, but not all hunters are born even. Hunters don't necessarily have a leveling system or anything similar. Once you get your ranking, you keep your ranking. And our friend Jin Woo here had the lowest of these rankings. So, his life was pretty hard. That's until he encountered the double lair, a dungeon that would allow him to solely level up. Now, we watch the adventures of Jin Woo and how he becomes a powerful hunter, never being too far ahead of his opponents, but not too far behind either. This is the story of the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jin Woo. Why should you read Solo Leveling? Well, Solo Leveling is a really intricate manhwa, which means Korean comic, or the Korean variant of manga. It potentially might have an anime in the near future, but we do not yet know. This is why you should start reading it right now. So Solo Leveling is the classic trope of taking a weak character and making them OP. But where this changes where the average trope goes is, he's the only person with the ability to do this. Jin Woo is encountered with it's a lot of things. Spoilers will be happening throughout the video, so that's your warning. So the many things he's encountered with are problems like monarchs, something that he will later on become, which are usually evil entities or evil entities in a war. Not necessarily, they just want to beat the rulers, which are like the good entities in a war, but also they're not good. It's a whole complicated situation. What makes Sung Jin Woo more interesting than most characters in anime and manga is that he's a necromancer. Necromancy isn't usually brought up for the hero, at least. I have seen a few manga, manhwa, and even some anime where they do touch slightly upon it, but usually necromancy is left for the villains. But in this case, in a world filled with dungeons and monsters, Jin Woo creates his necro army from those he had slain. He's not evil nor really good. He does help where he sees it benefits him or his friends, but other than that, he's just Jin Woo. He's an average guy that lives a life. He has a sister who is still in high school. His mother had been in a coma, but he had eventually gotten her out. And when it comes down to it, he even has a best friend like anyone else. So yeah, this is just a slight overview of Solo Leveling. Solo Leveling has a really intricate story. It is really cool, and the longer it goes on, the more interesting it becomes. If you've read the novels, you could spoil a lot for someone who only read the manhwa, because there is still a long way to go. Even though it's into the hundreds of chapters already, they're still not even halfway through that of the novel continuity. So, even though he's gotten OP, it will never get tiresome, because it's not them just introducing more powerful characters, but what if about characters that are the same power, just a larger abundance of them. So there's always something to fall back onto when it comes to Solo Leveling. This is why you should start reading it, because if you start reading it now and it gets his anime, you can brag, you know what's gonna happen for the first 4 or 5 seasons. This is my argue for why you should be watching Solo Leveling. Obviously, I've said that about 3 times, and you're probably thinking this is about stalling, isn't it? No. So when it comes to Solo Leveling, it has many a character that are easily attachable, and it does have its problems, like certain characters aren't focused in enough, but it's still clear what the overall character arc or character goal for the character would be. I just said character like 5 times in a single sentence, but still. When it comes down to it, I think the only problem with Solo Leveling is how they handle character progression. Not for the main character, but for the side characters. We see a lot of people that are more powerful than Jin Woo, and we do know Jin Woo overcomes them, but sometimes we don't see him overpowering them. We never see him physically overcome them. I want something that visually represents him dominating them, him becoming superior, him becoming the monarch. So, switching from that entire situation, let's get into his abilities and powers. Jin Woo was originally a fighting type hunter until he had gotten the Solo Leveling system, where he had access to skill points. he would mostly focus in speed and strength and become similar to a stealth type, basically hunter. So he had quick movement, high hiding stats, and gruesome attack. His defense wasn't too high because of this assassin-like skill distribution, and he would even eventually get a stealth-based ruin, which is like a skill which would allow him to go invisible. So moving on from that, after he had gotten the solo leveling system, he had gotten a job and a class eventually, which was that of a necromancer, a necrolord, and then the shadow monarch. The shadow monarch abilities lets him resurrect anyone that he had defeated in battle. It didn't even need to be him. As long as he can convince the dead spirit to rise back as one of his shadow soldiers, he can bring them back, even if it's to help them accomplish revenge, or if they just don't want to die. So there's a versatility to what can happen. Obviously, there are certain criteria. Obviously, monsters can be failed to be brought back, either due to their will or due to them being dead for too long, or even when it comes down to it, being a demon. Yeah, that sounds kind of weird, but there's this entire like side arc where he fought against demons, but they weren't able to come back. And eventually, we see him encounter other monarchs like himself, and we discover that even though Sung Jin-woo is the most powerful person in the world, what beyond the world? Like, there's more powerful beings than him. So he would eventually come back to losing, and in a classic trope, he'd die and come back more OP. Let me explain this real quick. He would die, this is a massive spoiler, by the hands of the other monarchs, and would come back. He would not come back immediately though. He would be sent to the realm of the previous shadow monarch, the person that had given him his powers. He finds out that this shadow monarch used to be a part of the rulers, the opposing force to the monarchs, but then fell because he didn't want war. He didn't want people fighting. He wanted to protect this god that was no longer there. So he was kind of out of place. The god was doing wrong, and the god wanted the war. He wanted to protect the god, but he didn't want the war. So what he decided to do was give himself up to Jin-woo. Not only did Jin-woo at this point take all the power of the original shadow monarch in him, but had even gained his full power and full army. So we did see a lot of cool new shadow soldiers. As I said, I haven't really gone over too much, but this is a lot of the story I just spoiled. But don't worry, if you go read it, you'll still be interested if you haven't yet. And yeah, so I guess that's gonna be it for this video. Maybe leave a comment saying who your favorite shadow soldier is. Mine is Icarus, so yeah, there you go. I will like and respond to your comment with Icarus if you do give me your favorite shadow soldier. So yeah, I hope I convinced you to read Solo Leveling. It's a great manhwa, one of my favorite personally. And yeah, next time we do one of these videos, we will be going over the beginning after the end. And without further ado, peace.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Subscribe for more.
Yada yada does it.